this idea of doing less with more is very, very interesting in academia. We will never able to build something very big, large models. But can we still use the existing small models to do something much more complex? This is something which academia can do. Second thing is, as a academia, we don't just care about, okay, my customers, we are not just care about the majority kind of thing. We also care about, okay, what are the guardrails around? Is it fair? It's robust? Is it bitter? And obviously, I understand PhD has a cost. And like I had lost a lot of personal, like my father was not there, passed away, and my family couldn't visit, and a lot of stress around things, and the competitiveness suddenly increases. COVID came, correct, and then suddenly LLM came, and I couldn't apply academia, and then everything is LLM now. They say if you do LLM, you can apply, otherwise there's no point, kind of thing. The field changes,
Right.
pivot. All these challenges will come in life, and this is PhD. I feel this is the challenges of life which will come in different form, other and all. But what you have to be strong and have supporting structures and talk to people and blabber out things. This will ease your mind and make it. After I feel happy about, despite what it's good, bad, I don't care.
All right. So, hello and welcome everyone to whoever is listening to this particular podcast. It has been some time. I think I recorded my last podcast, but today on the podcast, I have with me Professor Vivek Gupta. Vivek recently joined as an assistant professor at Arizona State University in the fall of 2024. And prior to that, he was at University of Pennsylvania as a postdoctoral researcher in Professor Dan Roth's lab, and also completed his PhD in computer science from University of Utah. His PhD research focused on inference and reasoning for semi-structured data, and his current research spans reasoning in large language models, multimodal learning, and instilling models with common sense for question answering. He has also received multiple awards and fellowships for his research works over the years. So it's finally nice to have you on the show, Vivek, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's happy to be here, and thanks, Jay, for organizing this. I've seen your podcasts in the past, and they are very informative and useful. So it's nice and honored to be here and talking to you today.
Likewise, likewise. So, for people who might not know you, like, can you give us a quick background and what was your entry point in AI? How did you get started with it?
Yeah, so I hail from India. So I started my undergrad at IIT Kanpur in 2011. So that time, there was AI, but most of the traditional feature engineering kind of AI there. So till my third year, which is around 2013, I have not much any exposure of AI kind of thing. I was doing the standard algorithm, theory of computation, like the standard CS courses kind of thing, and there was no specialized course also kind on machine learning and NLP at that time. But after 2013, I did my undergrad project with a professor called Harish Karnik at ITK. Now I think he's retired. And that was my first exposure kind of thing to AI. And from that project, I realized, oh, this is very interesting field, because here generally when we program, we have X and we write some program which take the input X and get you Y. But this is
Mm,
interesting, like you have X and Y, now you're learning the program automatically. So that itself, the illustration, okay, you can learn the program itself. It's nice. And I thought, okay, this will actually eliminate one day programming, although it took several years to have something getting closer to that nowadays. But that was
right.
my first impression. Okay, you don't need to program things, you can automatically generate programs and get things done. So given X and Y, you learn the P, which will give you X comma P, give you Y. So that was my first introduction. That undergrad project went okayish only. I have a lot of learning, but from it, I didn't got, I think, very good grade. But I was super excited and all. And then I next semester continued this, and I decided I will do a master thesis project with same professor, and I continued. And in the master thesis, then I started working with Flipkart, and one thing led to another, and then I went into this field of AI and specifically NLP on that.
I see. I see. And how did you go about deciding your niche? Like for example, nowadays you are working primarily, like you have a very niche topic within NLP, which is itself a very broad spectrum. So how did that journey begin? You started with NLP in your master's thesis, then you joined PhD. So how did that particular topic come into place?
Yeah, so actually, when I did my undergrad and all, I was generally doing machine learning, feature engineering, and all. And then at that time, only this deep learning revolution just has started. So if people, I don't know, many new people will not know is just starting their PhD, but there were things called word vectors, and I think Glove and all received Test of Time award recently. So you might know. So those were very famous at that time, and that
Mhm.
actually really bring me interest. Okay, now you don't need to do feature engineering, you can actually embed things, and those embeddings although make no sense to humans but make a lot of sense to machine, and they can do great things with it. They can do a prediction, they can do things. So that idea of okay, now you don't need to do hands feature engineering, you can have models which are neural networks and they can actually embed things, started in around like 2015 onwards. So there, this was my entry point. Okay, this is very interesting thing I feel, and this was part of the NLP kind of thing. So this ventured into NLP. So I did a collaboration with Flipkart, who funded my master thesis. I end up building a categorization products for them as well as a publication. My first publication in NLP came in Calling. So Calling was not is a good conference, but not like ACL and all, but still it's a very strong conference. And first time as a getting a paper in NLP and all this all motivated. And then I decided, okay, I need to explore more research. So before joining PhD, actually, I spent 2 years as a Microsoft research, and that's a pure research lab in India, and it's pretty good. So there, I actually explored more of NLP and uses in ML and all, and resource constraint settings, other NLP and AI algorithms and all. So that all motivated kind of thing. Okay, I should work more on NLP, and it has a lot of useful application, not just in understanding text, but you can even use this, for example, these embeddings for label embeddings and other things. So I work on like extreme settings, like millions of labels as well as resource constraint stuff, and that get me motivated. Okay, NLP, and this led to me to do a PhD. And I think the PhD topic and my area, that was like at this field of time, I realized people are doing lot of things around, and there are things which are crazy about. But my main point about is like, okay, if most many people are doing something, I think there is not more resource needed from my side. If I can
Yeah.
pick something niche, which is not people doing, but I think that will be interesting. So this idea of like structured data, like tables, charts, map, came to me that time because I thought like, okay, most of the people are doing text, or they have vision community who's doing vision, but there are things in between which nobody is thinking that much. So there I thought of idea of semi-structured text, which is not text, not images also, but something lying in between, which is like a free form text. They are also not knowledge graph. Knowledge graph also people are working on. So which is very clean format of data, hand curated, human curated and all. But semi-structured, these tables which are present in the abundance in the world, in the web and everything, but they were not being utilized and all. So that made me motivated. Okay, I should work on this area. And because one thing is less people were working, I found that it has a lot of application in the real world. It presence is there in the real world, and there are not many work are done on this. So this motivated in doing this. And this is also my advice to new people also, like, see, always following trend might not be useful. Sometimes you have to see where the nicheness lies, and also
Yeah.
also nicheness you see if there's an application in the real world, and it will be
Yeah.
useful, and maybe not useful in the exact 1 year or immediate future, but they might be useful, for example, in the next 5 6 years. For example, now I think there is every conference there's some aspect of structured data learning, structure prediction, something related to structure understanding is coming much more prominent with these LLMs and all. So you have to also
Yeah.
have this patience, a little bit of vision, which is harder I feel, but like, and I also give credit to my advisor, Professor Shikumar, because he has this thought of he write a small grant, I think with Google or something on this, and he proposed me I think three problems something, and I say, oh, this is very interesting, I think this is this. So he give me like I think 3 4 days to decide on these three problems, and I thought, oh, table is nice, and then I started working on it. I have lot of hurdles also on this key. It's not working because it's new and niche and all, and I don't know people will care about this thing and all those. But
Yeah.
I think that's I stick to it, and that helps.
Right. And for most people, like, how would you say your motivation in this research came into place? Was it because like the application domain interested you the most, like how this particular algorithms are used in real world, or what was it the technical challenges that are in like involved in these kind of algorithms that interested you? Or I think third option, a bunch of people who are interviewed, they have said that this was the only option for them to get into AI research, and hence they pursued the research. Out of these three categories, how would you associate yourself? Like, how did you get into each of these fields?
I don't think so. Third is the main thing because as I told, like I have so within like even starting my PhD, I have 3, 4 options of projects with the same professor.
Right.
At the same time, I was also exploring another field which are very popping up, and I did explore fairness and bias with Professor Suresh. In my first year, actually, I attended like 3 group meeting of 3 different professors because I was more enthusiasm in taking things, and I
Yeah.
did work on that area also. So there was definitely much more options around to work on thing. I think like I stick to this in some way. I was a little comfortable with more NLP than direct machine learning and all.
Hmm.
Secondly, it was like I feel a little bit confidence in my advisor and me working together on this, the synergy aspects of we can make it happen kind of thing. So that's one thing. Um, yeah, and there is both way. So both 1 and 2 I feel is there. So I see application as I told like I feel like structured data, unstructured data like raw text. People has lot of work, there's search engine and all, but tables there was not much work and it's not unexplored kind of field there. So I thought ki, okay, this is present in the world. It's very useful. Even when you buy a product, there is a table there. Every talk announcement, there's a table. There's a structured format. So then say it's present everywhere, but people don't use it kind of thing. Second thing is I found also challenging, which actually my advisor and me together figured it out why this is challenging. Because it's not like there's a lot of challenges of ambiguity involved in this. It's implicit understanding of stuff. If something is written, there's no paragraph or context around it. So you have to infer that automatically. There's a lot of common sense involved, there's other aspects involved. You have to understand the structure. So I also see a lot of new challenges which are not explored, and many of the models don't even think of these challenges at that time. So this also encourages me, oh, this is a nice problem. There is things not done, there's application in the real world, and there is also NLP challenges. So if we solve, we will have some advancement to the community and all. So that also actually interested me in this area.
Okay, that's very interesting. So, as in, like, if you were to paint a picture for people who might not be familiar with this area of research, how would you paint this picture going from, like you said, previous to deep learning, like as in you were not even bird models, like previous to that, like word to vec, glove, like you said. So, how would you say this particular field has evolved in the last few years? Like, I want to get to the point where, like, nowadays people have been using LLMs and throwing LLMs at everything, like all kinds of data. We have multimodal LLMs, so basically anything that is in the form of data format that we typically use, LLMs can work on it. So how would you say, like, going from structure algorithms that had some rules in itself, nowadays LLMs, which is end to end, how would you paint the picture? And can you also talk about at the later end, like how do you see LLMs in the same field of research you're working on?
So definitely NLP has seen exponential growth in product. So I will never deny, okay, we haven't made progress. We have made a lot of progress
Yeah.
in that aspects. Definitely, when we started with, we have like fixed representations and all, and we also have fixed models. For example, we have a task, we have a data set, we make a model specifically tuned on that aspects. Okay, so that
Hmm.
was perfectly this thing, but still we were again in everything we were learning still representations, and we were basically using a lot of samples earlier to learn those representations and all. Now coming to that, now we have fixed learned representations with us. Now we just give at the inference time some information, and it adapt that representation and output and decode things around it. So definitely we have this giving much more samples and all. We have somewhat limited that, and also now we have generalized model because we have a fixed representation of thing, and based on the inference time what we give, it basically change that and output whatever we need. So I think of this as all we are learning is again in the representation space of embeddings, you know. So in the broad sense, it's not change in that way. We are still learning everything in representation sense, but obviously we have made progress from changing the parameter and representation kind of with by training large of samples to just at the inference level kind of thing. And now in this aspect, I feel the progress is interesting because with this new thing where we are able to have the fixed parameters, and we just at the inference level give different in context, and then it's changed the output. But this also bring other challenges kind of thing, which is like, okay, now we have output, but this may hallucinate things. It might not be fit. It might not work on all domains. It depends on how the model was constructed or how that fixed representation we came up. So these are now new set of challenges we have been to. The earlier challenges: can we make a model which work on multiple things? Can we avoid less data samples to train it? So now I feel the challenges aspects are being different, but still there is different kind of challenges and issue. Coming to particularly the structured data field, I feel there is work which is still relevant, like on embeddings and all, which are still used and which came with this table representation and all. So we are good in that. So we have made progress. Obviously, now we are fine tuning and pre-training exactly on tables and structured data, which is also making these fixed representation like which we have in LLMs and all works really good. So they can understand tables and all. But still, the nuisance of reasoning and understanding the context. And if you go out of the box in any way, or if you have something more complex and not simpler, or things which it hasn't seen yet, so those things
Right.
basically still have struggle with. So there we again have to think of how we can do it, maybe by training or going to the backside. Okay, we get very good data and then make the model tune to it. Or we can think of, okay, now, okay, I have structured data, I have a fixed representation. Now they have issues. Can at the inference layer I can put some rules, constraints, and make it. So I still feel that symbolic and structure, specifically when you're working with tables and all, those things are very interesting. A simple example I can give: let's say you are input where there's a table, correct? And you see the model is doing well. Now, since it's a table, if you permute the rows or columns, it should still give the right output. But it might not be
Mm.
possible because maybe it hasn't seen that data, or it might not be robust on that aspect. So, can we make a constraint? Okay, whenever you permute anything, if the table makes sense, then the model output should not change. And let us put that in the inference time, and we can check on this every time it give, like let's say check on all the permutations and then make sure that results are not changing. So these constraints, if we can put at the inference level, that might help. So I think there's a scope about doing a lot of more things now at the inference time than just fine tuning and all. Where I think the fine tuning now is even harder because we have fixed representation, which have memorized a lot of things, which have a lot of data, and they are also pretty large. Not everybody in academia or even let's say industry can change those things and make something on that. But
Right.
inference level, we can do a lot of things. So I think from training to inference thing, this is what we have. And I think now putting constraints, working on structured data has become even much more thing. And now I can do a lot on structured data than I was able to do when we have fixed representation, where everything you need training data, which was very hard
Mm.
to get, fine tune, label data. Now we can use unsupervised data, we can use automatic method, we can even use synthetic data creation and do something around. I think those shift has now happened, which is I think in a good way positive also, but it bring new challenges and aspects.
Right. So I have a bunch of follow-up questions. Like I'll go in the same order that you spoke about. So one is reasoning. So like I don't come from NLP background, but I do keep on seeing people from like people on Twitter who try to debate LLMs can reason or not, or like in the current state they definitely can't. But is there a possibility? Because like you said, we can do a bunch of things at inference, and most of these models are doing a bunch of things at inference. So like reinforcement learning with human feedback and those kind of things. So I wanted to learn more about, first of all, can you define reasoning? What exactly do we mean? Like, is it similar to how we ask a human that why did you answer a particular question? Or it is something else in technical definitions. Secondly, why is it so hard? Like if I have a model that has seen everything in the world, like every text in the world, sorry, and if it has probability correlations between all of these values, it should have been able to reason a little bit better, right? Like why does LLMs fail at reasoning in its current state right now? And third thing is, what are the kind of things you think can be leveraged from past research? I think you said there have been some rule based things, symbolic structures that we can incorporate and make things better. So, definitely, we are not talking about saying LLMs are bad, but what are the things that people can look into, potential venues where you can fix this error? So, yeah, can we start with like understanding what reasoning in the space of AI models is?
Exactly. So definition of reasoning is tricky, and everybody has their own version. I will try to give what I think of reasoning. It might be
Yeah.
not a complete definition, but I still try to formulate something around. So I think reasoning is all about providing reasons. If you think reasoning actually come from reasons, which mean let's say you have a task something and you have an output this, and you can, if you can explain how you get that things, and second thing, if you can follow those steps you will get that answers, then I think it's called reasoning. So this is, I feel reasoning is the steps which is required to arrive to that answers, and if those steps are not followed, then you're never able to arrive that answer. And now those steps can have different aspects. Some of them require calculation, some of them require using of common sense knowledge. It's like using external knowledge or common sense knowledge around it and use it. So this is all I feel. Reasoning is all about providing reasons to this. Now, also providing this reason, I don't mean just providing explanations. So there is also things people think, okay, if I provide explanations, is I'm reasoning? No. If you don't follow those explanations, first of all, those explanations should be right. Secondly, if you don't follow those explanations, follow those mean models following those explanations and not arriving that answer, then we cannot say it's reasoning on. Okay. If I have to see if this actually a model is reasoning, and I also feel this is what I feel a definition of reasoning. It should be invariant on something and covariant on something. For example, the example I give, if I perturb the rows of the tables, then the model should do it. If actually a model is reasoning on something, then it should be invariant and don't change its answer. But if the model is using any memorization, any other aspects, then it will not do the answer. So if the underlying reasoning is same, then model will always do the right things. But if the underlying reasoning is not changed, so if I had a shortcut for getting the answer, for example, from his memorization, the memorization is not bad. For sometimes, like you need memorization because if you have factual knowledge, just recall that factual knowledge. Correct. But now, if you want to use that factual knowledge in a way, connect things, and then get to the answer, which is providing reason, then if it do right, then it will always get the answer right, provided whatever the input things change, not just perturbation wise, but if you have another problem, let's say, of equal difficulty. So we reason by, for example, if we learn 2 plus 2, two-digit number addition, we learn three-digit number addition, we generalize to 100-digit additions, correct? Or we learn
Right.
multiplication for 2-digit, 3-digit, we generalize to 100 this. But this is not true with model right now. They work on input which they have seen a lot, really, really, really well. But at the same time, if you provide them something different, which is a little bit more complex, or in a different setting, they don't do well. So they are not able to that reason well, which is your second question. Can our existing model able to reason? I would say not exactly. So they are doing good things. So what I feel like is, and one of the thing which I feel what you also point out is maybe they alone cannot reason, but with tools and with
Right.
symbolism, maybe they can do better reasoning, I feel like. So I don't want to,
Right.
it's controversial statement, they can't reason, but I would say like, I still feel that they are not. So I feel like they are brittle, if I define in another way, and not robust. So that's, I think most of the people, even people who are very, very strong favors of LLMs will say that they are brittle and not robust. And one reason why they are not able to do that is because they can't reasons. And the good idea for that is if we can bring this constraints, if we can bring this knowledge around things well, then they can reason. For example, now we have seen that O1 is out, correct? And it's able to
Right.
do really well, and we actually don't know what happening behind the scene. There's a hidden layer around it and all, but like you can see now each steps there is improving around reasoning aspects. So they have each step kind of supervision on the reasoning part. We like
Right.
putting constraint and the inference time. So also one thing about reasoning is harder problem will take more time to reason, which now you can see in O1, the inference time depend on the problem complexity, which was not
Mhm.
true earlier, because earlier used to like if you give any length of output, any complex problem, it output on the same time, which is not true now. So we are building, going towards that reasoning aspects, but I don't think so only LLM or next word prediction is the right answer. Maybe this along with tools, constraints, symbolism in some aspects can really help. One good example of this is alpha geometry, which they build. So they do have symbolism out laid out well, and then they basically try to reason it LLM, generate plan, correct it, verify it, and then execute. So this is
Mhm.
how I think these, if these three things work together, probably we have some systems which can reason really, really well. So I think the
Right.
old literature is still useful because they will bring the other two parts, which we will integrate. Another good example is like, let's say you are doing some domain specific thing, correct? Where you have very less data. But has a
Right.
domain expect you know what is there, what is the rule, how it's done, how is it. Now, if I can incorporate these knowledge, maybe not at the training time because it's expensive enough, but at the inference time, I give it symbolism. I tell it how to reason and let it make it follow that. Then probably we have a better chance of this. And then we have
Right.
more robust and non-brittle system, which can be used in the real world. Otherwise, if you don't have robust and brittle and they are unfair model, then it will not work in the real world. So this is what
Right.
I feel. Reasoning is all about providing reasons to get to the answer.
Yeah, that's a very interesting insight. I think the way you say it, I think makes more sense. I think the way you said large language models, which are basically like a large learned representation space, actually that largeness is itself hurting the reasoning capability, because when I ask a question at test time, it's going through that whole learned representation space, and when I once I change the data, it just keeps on blabbering about things that does not make sense. Rather, I would want the model to use its huge rich learn representation a representation space, but do a bunch of other things like you said, like symbols or rules, and then answer the questions to be much more consistent and coherent with the query that the user had. So
I feel like LLMs like a big encyclopedia already embedded with some kind of lousy indexing stuff done well. And in those indexing is not just on like the knowledge facts, but indexing on how to reason, how things are there, like how steps of getting something out and all. And they combinedly use that things to do well on many problems and all. But now if we can use this power of they're excellent memory. I don't think that any human can memorize the knowledge which they have, the factual thing. Even like the steps of getting to the answer or how you can get to the answers in multiple ways. Even that they have really well. But can we recall the things at the right time? Can we use them at the right time? Can we connect things right time? That's stuff which is missing. One other good professor from here, you already know, like Professor Rao also, like the planning part, the reasoning part is still missing. You can plan that things well and can reason on them, then probably we can do much better. So
right.
they are excellent source of knowledge. They're excellent source of having already things around, even like codes on everything, how to get to the answers, but recalling that at the right way and right thing at the right time, that's where I think we are still working, and which like models like Owen and are now trying to push out to make it better.
And do you think the current race for scaling large language models, and I think this really depends on the industry, like this is a question related to industry demands only, but do you think like is there any value to scaling large language models? I can understand, I think they can do better things, but there's also a debate where they say scaling these large language models will hit a plateau, right? Like there's only few things you can achieve by scaling large language models. Do you think this is true for at least, let's say, reasoning or any other tasks that are downstream to LLMs?
So I feel like we will never able to show LM every possible way of doing things. Specifically, we'll never able to show the future. And if you
Right.
think of this machine learning concept from the old time, it was all about prediction, correct? This word prediction came, which is prediction is always on the future thing, correct? Things which are
Right.
known, you never predict on them, correct? So definitely bringing all things, which is my opinion, together, like scaling and all, will not probably solve everything out. They will definitely make models better because now they have much more knowledge. Now they have much more constructions of rules and all within them, correct? And they will also have seen more examples and supervision also around that to use them properly. But still, I feel like they will not have the full scale of predicting the future kind of thing. So if I give a new problem, let's say, or a hard problem, like we human generalize so well, if we see something, we do something and then we do. So we actually generate new mathematical theorems. We do things, we connect things, we use our brain to convert to something new. So there at that level, I think if if we want to say like a AI which is really helpful in the future aspects, beyond obviously they have facts and all they can connect and they are already being used in like scientific discovery and all those things, but still doing something more reasoning and logical based, I think that will plateau out. And I think for that we need much more, not just scaling up. I don't think so is the only solution. This has already
Mm.
been shown like scaling up has this benefit, but also like for example, Olmo and Malmo kind of model already show like how do you train these models, correct? And what kind of data you use. If you use a cleaner data, you will get better. And already Llama and all they have shown that you don't need big skill, but you can still achieve very good performance,
Yeah.
very good generalization with even less data. So it's also about what we input and and there is a scale of what we can input. If we even input everything, which already we are doing, I think there's a plateau. We need to have now different ways of thinking about supervision also now, which people are like over is I think a different aspect of like kind of supervision in the intermediate step itself. Correct?
Right.
So those things kind of thing I think is a new idea I feel to do better kind of reasoning. So only data and scaling up, like if I have 7 billion, now I go to like 90 billion, it will help. I don't think so. It will definitely help on task, benchmark. There's also issue of contaminations and all those, keeping those aside. I generally believe that larger models are better despite contaminations and all keeping aside. But only that scaling, I don't think so is the solution. There are other things which we can do as a smart to do better. I think only scaling is not the thing. And then obviously, like not everybody can use a 400 billion models or even more size.
Yeah. True.
So, if we say like if you use 400 million models to do shopping or like a very small task, then also like it's not the right solution. You can't. So think about like you can't use a rocket to travel from one where you can use a Uber to travel from one place to another. Correct? That makes sense. So
But
have to see where the things is useful and where. Yeah.
but would you say that the LLM research have pushed LLMs have pushed the research by a certain threshold, like more or less in the next 5 years people will be developing new research built on top of LLM. So let's say the original models that didn't use any such kind of huge representation space, they are maybe slightly less popular or maybe less effective in some ways, but people will be developing techniques on top of these pre-trained models and then doing or maybe making sure that it doesn't do hallucinations and those kind of things. Do you think in the next 5 years, like it has at least pushed, like everybody will be using LLMs and then developing a bunch of things on top of this development?
It's a very nice question. And I definitely feel LMs are here and going to be staying for a long time. And secondly, the use of them in applications will increase a lot. But only like we have a super LLM which will do the task will not happen. People will take this, they will take their own data, they will take their own constraint, they will take their own domain knowledge, which I feel. Everything of this I feel like is a domain knowledge. And then they will use it to make the model do better. Coming to your other questions about like previous representation, like bird, robot, or even word to vec kind of thing, their role versus this. So there is a shift which definitely has happened. Is we have made kind of this accessibility of models really, really easy. For
Right.
example, I told you like now everything we need to do is kind of like at the inference level. We have some very good fixed representation thing, which you download, you change thing at the inference level. Maybe you need small fine tuning to make it better, but like not many big samples and all those to do things. Where earlier, if you have to do something as you have to design a loss, you have to design a representation, you have to get a lot of training samples and then do this thing. That might give you a much better model for that particular task X. But then the cost and compute required to do all those things much, much larger. So not
Mm.
everybody can first do that. Like let's say a material scientist probably will hesitate doing all these things. He may need to hire a data scientist for doing that. But now that barriers is a little bit down. So definitely the use of LLM in various fields will be much more. So I talk with a lot of professors here also. And everybody wants to use LLM because now they think, oh, that's accessible. I can actually download a Llama model. I can give a prompt and give a context and started doing things already. Where earlier you
Right.
you take any bird model, it will not do anything on your domain data. You have to first fine tune and all those things. So in that aspect, I definitely think the field has shifted and the use of LLM will explode. There's no doubt, and they are also powerful in sense because this fixed representation now what we have learned is really really nice. So
Yeah.
giving right context itself is started to able to do a lot of things. Secondly, they recall a lot of memories and all. So they already have it's not just about we have learned a good representation, but they have seen a lot of data already around the world, which I think we will never able to collect ourselves if we want to do it, or any even a domain expert will not able to see. So it has already seen a lot of common material data, but maybe very specific data it might not have seen, which the let's say material scientist want to use. But now he can use that data as a context or with some small fine tuning and then do things well. So I think
Yeah.
definitely that's because of this flexibility now we have. Definitely the use of LLMs will explode, and there is definitely a shift which has happened, which I agree.
Right. And one thing I think you brought up very nicely, which is something similar to what we observed in our own research. I think one key area that any researcher really wants to solve is the idea of generalization, right? Like how do you make sure that models can generalize to new data sets? And there are lots of techniques, lots of models that have been proposed in the past. And typically, I work with vision models only. So one thing that we noticed is once we have our own data sets, if we train a model from scratch on that data set, it will be limited to that kind of distributions, regardless of whatever big the model is, regardless of how much you pre-process the data set, whatever strategies you train the model with. But recently we tried out the biomed clip model, which is a variant of clip model itself, and the way it performs on imaging data is really nice compared to our existing models that was trained on a bigger data set, a bigger architecture, and even then it outperforms that thing. So one thing maybe that this is just my intuition, I could be easily wrong, but I've seen like at least these models who have seen sufficiently large amount of data sets, they somehow tend to generalize better. I'm not sure if it would be the case with large language models, but I think that's a nice strategy. I know it's like the easier answer. I think for a researcher, like scaling models and bringing in more data sets, it is not very sexy. As in, like it's not very appreciated. But at least in terms of performance metrics in industry, where performance matters, like I don't care about the novelty, but I have seen like LLMs every day. I think we input a bunch of things, right? Like in different formats, it tends to perform in the similar metric game. So, like, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but one thing I've noticed is scale tries to beat the generalizability metric a little bit better.
This is definitely true what you are saying about earlier when we fine tune on any specific data. Compared to that model and the fine tuning we have, we are still overfitting on that data, which now
Mm,
not doing because we are never training. We are just using it as a context as the inference level. So you're never changing the parameters of the model itself. So the
right.
model is still the same if you look at it. It's just the context mostly which we are changing in many of the cases. So that's why it's generalized well. So I 100% agree that generalization is better because we are never training on that data. Kind.
Right.
That's actually really, really help in making things better. So, and I think the scale has a good factor in that because as you increase the scale, it's not about just the fact it recalls, but also it see more patterns of how to do the stuff. So I don't think so. It's like people say language model are like knowledge source. I think they're knowledge source, but they're just not knowledge source of like facts. They're knowledge source of how to like I think these rules, constructs, everything around code, this thing. So code is not a knowledge source, but it's just how it's done, correct? Kind. It's a procedure. So they are
Right.
also knowledge source of all those procedures. But can they understand and connect them? Can they plan them things out? That thing I feel still there's a lot of work needed. But I 100% agree with scale. You get much more these constructs. You get much more of these facts done. You see much more of these examples around. So it connect things and do things. But is it actually able to reason on something new? Is able to connect on complex harder problems? That still is a big question. And definitely scales do help at some point, but we do need to use other techniques to make them this. And one big factor is this robustness, brittleness, hallucination, because these things are not in control. So we don't want to have today models which go there, but they work only on one type of data. So they do generalize. There's no point. But there are still issues of this with scale. These things also some so it can do really well on some tasks, but it can do really bad on few tasks.
Yeah.
So
True.
few tasks we still need to have because if we don't have that, we are not covering the complete picture.
And talking about scale, which brings me to a very interesting question. And these are like in a very joking way. I sometimes feel nice I'm not in the LLM NLP domain, because if like I want to ask you a broad question of like how do you see, because you recently joined academia and you have been seeing the progress in this field so far. So how do you see the role of academia versus industry in the era of LLM research? Because as a student, I typically am very like I started my PhD in 2020 and still I feel very like bamboozled. Like it's like I still feel very lost when I see there are so many models, so many big impact models that have been published out there. Where do I start with? So I want to learn like what was your idea in your head? Like how do you see academic institutions still contributing to LLM research where everything is just at scale?
Yeah, this is a very, very, I think, interesting question. I like this question a lot. And I think it's a very, very important question also, I feel. I feel like there's things which industry do and things which academy do. So academia has this habit of, I feel, which is in less doing more. Okay. Or having more smarter solution to things. Yeah, no discredit to industry people. They actually came with many of the bigger models and all. But this idea of doing less with more is very, very interesting in academia. We will never able to build something very big, large models. But can we still use the existing small models to do something much more complex? This is something which we will, academia can do. Second thing is, as a academia, we don't just care about, okay, my customers, my like we are not just care about the majority kind of thing. We also care about, okay, what are the guardrails around? Is it fair? It's robust. Is it bitter? I'm not saying industry don't totally overlook this problem, but
Yeah.
much what we care about is, oh, is it actually doing the smart thing? Is it actually doing the right way? So we care about those things much more valuable in that aspect and fix it. So many of my papers, we do talk about robustness, counterfactual, doing things in the right way, right for right reasons. Those things we as an industry, we as academia, much, much, much more interested in. Okay.
Right.
Compared to industry, they definitely bring a very, very, very important role of, okay, there is some good technology, some good research out, or some things which academia also do. And can they, because definitely, as you said, this LLM will come into product, will be there outside, general people will use it and all. Can we fix those things before they release it? Also, can some of these things also, because of the pressure around in industries, quick fixes kind of thing, those might work for their product, they might work for majority cases of their stuff. They might work,
Right.
for example, the guardrail thing, like I will not answer this thing, correct? But that's kind of a fixie thing, correct? Why it should not detect automatically and do something around that, correct? So those things is harder. It's time consuming. It take, that's why it's called research kind of thing, where academia can spend time and fix it around this thing. Then also this question of, like, I feel like industry, if something is working and it can be applied and it can be fixed around, I don't think so there, then the motivation aspect of making it correct, making it thinking in a different way, in a rational way, or scrapping it up and doing it something new will be there. But in, I don't know, it was little bit more freedom around in the past, but now I feel it's lesser there. But in academia, like this thing, you can still do that, correct? Like tomorrow, if I
Right.
want, like I can want some new LLM kind of thing. If I have an idea, if I have a thought, which is little less nowadays in industry because we have some working solution which is really, really good. Last and most important, I also feel is like we as academia are not just doing research, but I also feel we are teaching, we are imparting the next generation of people around things. And that's very important role if you think about it, because what we teach, correct, is very important. So we have the LLM. If I teach somebody, okay, you can use LLM for doing things, I will also teach about, okay, these hallucinate, these are brittle, they can be unfair, check on multiple inputs, do these stuff. All those things also I will impart to the next generation. Instead of just say, okay, this is the model, now you write context and it helps. I feel that's something which training the next generation who will build these products, do things in much more robust, ethical, and right way. I think that also is the role of academia want to do it. So there are, I think,
Right.
multiple aspects where academia can actually shine. The less from less doing more, imparting right knowledge and right things and careful points to the next generation, uh, thinking of problem where industry might not be that careful or thinks it's working, or they may have a solution which is fixing. I've seen a lot of patch fixing happening nowadays because of the competitiveness and all, but like it's also useful. I think products need to be out, this is a good thing out, and we also, I use technology, I have Apple, Mac, all companies product I use. I'm on social media, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I use Apple products, I use Google product, Google search, everything. I use autocomplete and everything. So I definitely need this technology. But at the same time, I also want to build this guardrail and make them better and see things. So because I'm not associated with this exactly customers and the ties of money and all those things that closely, obviously
Right.
association, but not that closely. So I think those things also I feel help in making things much, much better. And then also we as a academia look for new problems which are not yet thing, or new things which are overlooked around things. So I think those aspects I think where academia can really, really help and do. So I feel it's complementary job. Definitely building some technology closer to the people, that's job. I think more to the industry. They
Yeah.
will do it, but doing in the right way, I think that's the academic check can help. So there are people who were saying one good example of this thing is like Owen. I feel like Owen was one push about Owen was about like there was still claims that LM cannot reasons. And then people think of different way of doing it. And then they came with Owen, which is not just LM. I feel it's LM plus tools plus a lot of other things together. So
Right.
pushing on those aspects, asking the right question, which academia will do, can help also getting better technology, better things, which customers, humans, and every will pay for it implicitly, explicitly to do. So I think those things work together and it will be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can just add to that is like I agree with whatever you said, and I think it's if you look at these tools as broadly, they are just like any other software tools, right? Like over the years, like if you even see from 1990s, like database tools that have been proposed since then, people are still working on this. It's still nowhere perfect. Like the more you use it among people, I think you'll understand its limitations. You'll see where it fails, and you need people who can patch it up. And I think innovations happen over there. Like I think people, we have like red teams at Microsoft, right, where they try to find vulnerabilities in systems even if they are like not AI models. So I definitely agree with that. I think that's where the role of academia could be. They can really try to investigate what's going on in this model that is not being implemented, despite being like people might not notice it. Like let's put it that way. Like people might not notice where these LLMs model can fail, and this is where, because the role of academia is structured in such a ways where you try to investigate and ask questions where most people don't ask questions. So I think that's where people like you, who are like researchers and like try to inspire the next generation, so that's where they'll make students investigate these small nitty gritty details, where because industry focuses on so many things at times, so they might miss it. So yeah, I love your answer. Yeah.
Just one more thing also I want to add is like we also see things where it's not you. For example, now we see a technology, LM is good and all. I think academia is first, I think more thing, okay, now it can be used in this way. Or it can be used to, let's say, improve science, or it can be improved to do this thing. So maybe we started this and maybe industry do it in a better way with scale and everything and money around and constructing larger data sets and all. But
Right.
that's also one thing. Initiation can happen in a lot of things by academia, which I
Yeah.
think is the correct way. And I
Right.
have sources from, I can cite a lot of examples in the past which are there, but I don't want to go into those controversies and all. But like, so initiation can happen from academia and maybe industry can do it better also and scale it up and this, but that's okay, that's fine. But that's also, I feel, where academia can also contribute.
And like I agree. And one last question that I have, like I think before we switch gears, is I think if you noticed the recent keynote talk by Eliad Neurips, he said one thing that has been like I think a lot of people have speculated, and there are a lot of questions and a lot of retweets on that. Is basically he said like pre-training, as we know, will end, right? Like and like I wanted to like learn more about your perspective, because we talked about like these big models that have rich feature representations from huge amount of text corpora. I wanted to know what you think of that, like along like in what sense, because like this particular statement is also tied to things like AGI, super intelligence, things like multimodal, because these are like very far claims, right? Like some people have claimed everything will be achieved by 2026 or 2025. I forgot like what was the predicted timeline. So I wanted to know what your thoughts are, and yeah, what that Ilya's context means to you versus how do you see things in reality?
First of all, let's say disclaimer, I have not seen the talk as well as I have not probably seen the tweet. So maybe
Yeah.
now, so probably I missed it out due to busy schedule. But um, I feel like definitely there are better ways of doing than the next word prediction thing. And I don't even know what context, but maybe he's talking about that. There's better way of getting this pre-training things done on this thing, and maybe this is not the right thing. So I exactly know what the context is talking about because I think super alignment and all these things. Like, what is mean by that? Is there any better way of training strategies, or does it think like
Right.
okay, maybe the next word is not we train on reasoning steps, with tools in the way, or like I don't know like what he's thinking on that aspect. So without context, I can't comment much, but this is what I feel like. Maybe he was saying like this is kind of the saturation with the pre-training approach kind of thing which we have, just putting up the corpus and expert prediction, or that's
Right.
where with the saturation kind of thing would have come. Now
Okay.
think of this AGI and all, like I don't know about AGI, but I feel definitely we will see AI in general use. So artificial intelligence in general use, or it's AIG or whatever you call it. So we will see AI products, AI in everyday life coming up. This year we see some products coming with AI, but not all products or not all industries that are. So I don't know. Within 2076, it will be done. It's very close. But within next 5 year, I do see AI coming up in all products in every industry in some way or another. Now, will this be AGI? No, I don't think so. It might
Mhm.
take more time than what we think. So I'm too, I don't know, like commenting on this, because every time people comment and then the expectations are break down and all. But so I think,
Yeah.
but definitely one thing I can guarantee is like AI will come in multiple products, multiple areas, multiple domains. Uh, not perfect, but they will definitely one of the supporting hand of human in doing things. So they will be like a collaborative partner of doing a lot of things together. So you will use AI for doing things. So that will definitely will happen in the coming in multiple fields, multiple factor. Now, will you call this AGI? I don't know, but AI will be useful and will be using general purpose. But AGI is like, also I don't really buy this artificial general intelligence. Like, what do you mean by that? Is it like better with humans? Because there is some task, for example, recalling facts. I think there's no better than LLMs nowadays. So they are actually beating humans. Correct.
Yeah.
At the same time, of some maybe reasoning around this, or maybe also what do you mean by AGI? Is like average human or expert human or like genius, super good IQ? Who you are beating out? Correct. And in what task?
Right.
In what way? So this definition of AGI, I don't know, kind of thing. Even if I go to the very close definition, okay, we have a machine which can do multiple tasks with everything well. That is somewhat coming closer, but still, we as a human do a lot of tasks. So right now, still, I have a Roomba which can clean my room, which use lidar and do things. But I still feel that it is not doing the great job. I still have to direct. I still have to do things. Also, I still have to do a lot of things by myself. So still, this is far away. Like the kind of like okay, AJ is there. Like I have a human, but I have someone who intelligent robot who is doing all the thing kind of. And if you ask this question to I think robotic people, they will have much better answer, because they will say no, there is no chance we can have right now. We have some intelligent brain now, intelligent context understanding stuff, but we as a human are very good in lot of things like common sense, perceptions. We generalize things well, we reason things well, we infer stuff very well, we have emotions, we have things around. So those things I think it's very far away in that aspect. So but I may be,
Right.
so I don't know. But AI use will definitely will be there, and in coming in multiple field that is going to happen. So AI will be useful in the coming decade. That's no doubt. AGI I don't need. And then the definition of AGI also vary. Like for example, for me AGI is good. Like if I can have someone who can make my PPT, who can make deliver my lecture, who can do some stuff. But still there is not that level. And AGI can be different for another someone who is just doing some kind of writing work, and then AGI is still it's already here, for example. So the definition of AGI also I feel is little blur around this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think to plug in, I think one of recently checked out Dr. Fei talk where she was trying to explain something where because most of people are talking about AGI, right, like general intelligence, and she portrayed like a concept which kind of make more sense. I think you already have that same intuition in you. Is like large language models have really achieved a good benchmark because you can consider language as a compact representation of knowledge, because if I say a cat is sitting on the table, you can just represent them in few tokens, but versus if you give it in an image like a 3D image or 2D image, it brings in a whole perspective of physics, color mechanism, how things go. And most of the vision models, I bet, like I think they don't have a clear understanding of what sitting means, what chair exactly means, like what having four legs, like a chair having four legs versus a cat having four legs, like what are the differences between these two. And most of these large language models, because of the scale, they have built like a shortcut to understanding what's going on. So when I say a cat is sitting, like what does the sit word mean, they have kind of understood like a shortcut, like what sitting might mean. And it sometimes helps, I think, query in the multimodal setting where you are trying to do a contrastive learning space where you're trying to merge concepts. But I think according to her, it's like still a bigger unknown question. And this brings back to like what you said, like, right, like humans, like a Roomba is designed for like a very specific task. And I think when we say AGI, we have so many factors, and which average, I think Jan LeCun always says that, right, like an average cat is much more smarter than most of these large language models that we have out there. So that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely that's true. And I think vision, as one point which you raised, is this multimodal thing. So we have made stride in LLMs and all, but multimodal things we have realized now that, oh, they get the answers, but maybe they are. This is a problem also. If you remember when we were having this BERT and embedding based models, like we have this VQA task and then we have VQA2, and then we realize they don't ground on the right evidence and get the things. So there was workshops on those and all those. Now again, we are seeing those problem resurfaces on that. We can get the stuff right, but we are not getting it for the right reasons. So now people are working on this. So again, reasoning, providing the right reasons. So we are still working on that thing, and that require a lot of other things like common sense knowledge. Physics is big things when we go in the vision space. Um, all those aspects, material science, everything. We as a human have very good ability of recalling the right knowledge at the right time and use it, where we have to see if models can do things that well and connect things and do the right reasoning. So
Makes sense. And I wanted to switch gears and maybe talk more about generic research. And this is not specific to your research, but as a role as your researcher. And I'll take LLM space still as an example, I think, but I think it applies to other domains as well. Um, at least after since 2016 or even earlier than that, we have seen an increased amount of publication in the AI space, right? So I wanted to ask, like, I don't follow LM research. Luckily, I think like because I will be overwhelmed. So like I'm putting kudos to that. But also it brings you a new venue, right? I think a lot of people are publishing. So in terms of like how many people are noticing your work increases a lot. And thanks to Archive, we have so many number of publications nowadays. Every weekend, I think when I follow researchers, they post more on Archive than I do on Instagram. So how do you like cope up with increased number of publications, and most importantly, filtering noise versus signal? Like some of them are really nice, like some of them have really nice intuition, but some of them are just I think borrowing like a low hanging fruit from what we have out there. So how do you, and some of them are really nicely written from big labs. So even then they don't have that much meat apart from like leveraging what they have built in the past. So how do you, how what kind of mechanisms you have built to filter out these noise versus signal?
so I feel like, yeah, this is actually, I don't know, I have a very good solution for it. But first, so first of all, this is very, very, very important, and especially for junior researchers. Like, this is super important question nowadays, and I get emails about what should we do. Um, so yeah, this is a double-edged sword. It's good to see, oh, a lot of things happening in LLM, a lot of papers, a lot of ideas. Okay, I'm happy to see if I have seen 10 papers on archive on my idea today. But at the same times, like, it's also about, oh, out of these 10s, which is good, which is bad, which is noise, as you said, which is really good. And are they really bringing some new ideas, new things in out, or are they just putting out? And then the associate challenges of like, okay, there's 10 papers. Maybe there's a good paper buried around, which might not be from a famous lab, but it doesn't got the tractions, it doesn't got the thing, and then it's lost, and maybe later somebody else do it in the same way in the different wordings and all, may get some tractions. So it's also good. We can lose good gems in these things,
Right.
and also we can have a lot of spend a lot of times in like going over the noise in that setting kind of. So I think it's actually very hard. Even think about archive is another level, but like even conferences finding good work and all, like it's super 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 art kind of thing. So my
And on, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So my thought around this is like, um I don't have a very good solution, but I feel like one stuff is like we need to somehow have better processing ability of judging papers nowadays. Okay, what is the thing? And specifically, I also feel now, uh, earlier it's like, I remember one thing which my professor said, like, there was a time in ACL we can read all the abstracts. And probably like if you give 2 months, you can also read all the papers. But now you can't do that. But
Yeah,
I think still having those aspects of, first of all, we need to get area specifics and all. Like what things you are passionate about, what things you are interested in. For example, your case, you have specific area, specific thing you are interested. Now, in that area, the scale already has been reduced, kind of thing. Correct? And then you can look in that. But that also has a double-edged thing. Maybe there is something in the other area which probably fit well with your thing and then do. And if you don't look at it, this. So I think like this is problem. So one aspect I feel students could do is like they should have a very smart way of skimming the paper, getting the core concept out. And this also I request the people who are putting these papers in archive and all, please write the core idea, the core thing really, really well. If somebody read your introduction, they should get everything about it. Okay. And
right.
then they can see about it. And this is also a good chance for them also to bring their paper up around that things and all. So now I get more, many of my good viewers and all from Twitter, but I think that's also a biased medium. Like you never know. Correct? People
Yeah,
also do this following of certain people and they think they write very nice papers and do that. I think is not bad idea, but then again, it's a bias kind of thing. Maybe there is someone smart in somewhere who write a very good paper and like we didn't read it and we might be benefiting from that. Yeah, this is a challenging time. I feel like the number of people is really exploded. But one aspect I definitely have good ideas may take time, but they generally come on the top. Like so it's not about like it will get lost. And also there are also time when something is a hype at the time, people's height and everything is okay, but 4 years later, oh, this thing doesn't work either. This is the wrong way. This is also think about Bird. I'm not saying Bird was bad idea. It's very excellent, good, and very good idea. And it led to the next generation of thing. But now people say Bird is no, Bird nobody thinks. And like LLMs is thing. So that doesn't mean Bird has not his value. Like it has values. So good things come, things will change and everything, but this idea of filtering out and all is a thing. And I think that's, you should also take advice from your advisors and all, like because they have experience, they have seen all these phases. So I'm new faculty, so I've done PhD, I've seen some cycle of BERT and then this LLM, but they have seen like traditional rule-based system, classical AI, then this deep network, then SVM era. So there was SVM was a big thing, like kernels used to do everything. Now came the neural network, then the embedding space, now this LLM. So they have seen all this thing, and every time the number of scale is increasing. This is not this thing. And then also talking to the smart people, attending conference. I also like this broad talks people give about the areas. These are very nice to find things. And then also find your niche. Because if you find your niche, then little bit the space is reduced and you see the connections, and be okay if someone else do very good work. I always appreciate if there's a good paper coming from anywhere and advancing field is nice. Even if I am not written that, it's fine. So be okay
yeah,
with that also. The aim should be getting good knowledge. And if you can contribute in that, that is fine. And don't stress about these things. So this will happen. Like this is how evolution happen. Like there's no doubt.
yeah.
One day we never thought ki machine will make our equipments, will make all the manufacturing thing, but that's happening. So it's fine. And we are comfortable with it. We are find new things. So this same thing will happen here.
Yeah, and I agree on the part where you said like it's a double-edged sword, right? Because I remember like on one hand we as young researchers, if I don't have that much background in that conference, it gives me motivation to publish. But at the same time, there are thousand other people thinking the same thing, so at the end conference receives a lot of a number of publications, and at the end you don't get a chance to review. I remember like I like for us Mikai is like one of those conferences where it's like the perfect place for us to publish, right? Like medical imaging and computer vision. And I attended in 2022, and my lab mate who had attended, I think, sometime in 2019, which was like slightly earlier year. And he said, like, at some point, if you have poster session, you will be able to, if you have some decent skimming talent, then at least you will be able to traverse through all the number of posters and at least create some summaries. And the time that we attended together, there were like around 200 per each day. So in, I think, 1.5 hour, that was like the poster session time that we have. There is no way, even like, I think the best of the researchers, they can't really skim through all of these ones. So you really have to select the ones that you want to attend. So there's a bias in your head, the ones that you want to attend, and you will make sure you interact with those presenters too if you have ask any questions. And I'm sure, like, I think CVPR, which recently came, and also NeurIPS, there's no way for us to browse through all the number of research and maybe get inspiration from someone. Because I remember, at least I attend a lot of medical conferences where I see someone else doing something different than me, but like I'm getting some inspiration that, okay, why didn't I think in that way? So yeah, I do agree. It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, I do want conferences to accept my paper, but again, it really dilutes the reputation of that conferences. Everybody starts, and that's why I think new venues came out, right? Like a transaction of machine learning research, which came out, which is a really nice venue over the years. I think not even years. I think maybe 2 years or something. And new venues, I hope new venues come out so that like CVPR and all those kind of venues don't take all the load.
Yeah, I have a thought on this also, which exactly ended at your point of view. Like we need to. So I like most of the enjoyment and my whole conference on workshops, which are
Yeah.
really we have very good keynotes who give a broad view of things. We have nice paper specialized in this. Small audience you can converse. So this workshop model, I think we should scale it more. And so if you even know like this fairness and all, which now become a big area, an important area, all started with the workshops. Knowledge based completion, it was a workshop, now it become an area. So I feel like this workshop model can be one way of handling these things better, which is again opening the small venues with starting with lesser people, and there you can be a little bit selective on making sure you filter out good papers, you get good things, and encouraging people to submit. Correct.
Right.
Uh, and then in that you can have specific audience, and I think also you get better visibility because all the people who work on, let's say I have a workshop on particular structure representation, now everybody from structure representation will see my work and comment, and they will be expert more in that area compared to if you have a reviewer from a large pool in ACL or something. So I think, but the only problem with this is, right, we still have a mindset, oh, workshops are not good, like they are lesser than conferences and all like this. So if we can flip this out model and we can, okay, if you submit in a specialized thing and where specialized expert are there, and if you can publish there, then it's with small audience only, that might be better. But this is something which I feel is could be there. And then again, new venues of specific things, they can open up and their values over the time increase and their importance increase. And I think that would be we can have some kind of solutions around this. And good work, and even if there's a good work in other area, there are smart people who will notice it and then bring in your area, and then you see if maybe which you are the smart one or there's someone else who did it. So
Yeah.
happens. So this is something. But I think I like workshops and small venues much more, which is like in your area, you think, and you have really enjoyment around that. And I agree with this. You can't view all the posters also nowadays. When this parallel session stuff, like I still didn't understand that parallel sessions, but still it's like, okay, people need to have choice or preferences over things. So for new person, it's very hard because they don't have preferences. Like as a first year PhD or even like let's say undergrad, correct? You don't know like, okay, is question answering better or like the semantic is better or the fairness is better, correct? So that's a lost cause for, in some way for them. Like it's harder for them. I feel for them. Like I know, okay, these sections I will attend because these are relevant to me and this is my area and this where I want to proceed and all this. But for new people and new PhD, it's harder. So I can sympathize on that for sure. It's a hard time for them. Yeah.
But a follow up for that particular thing. I also had one question for you is like which I found to be the most hardest, but also rewarding. Like I don't want to regret about it. But as in one question is like how do you find your interest as a first year PhD student or a first year newbie researcher? There are so many different domains that we have nowadays, right? So and each of them have their own version of prime time in AI research. Like there are few labs who are doing great. There are few works that have been published which are like really attractive to start and implementing. I think reinforcement learning used to be the very biggest attractive area in 2016 or 2017, right? After that, I think vision transformers made it much more cooler with transformer architectures. And nowadays, of course, yes, it's LLMs, and there are a bunch of other fields where people are very excited. If I am a PhD student who joined in maybe if I'm new to ASU, let's say, and I don't have any preference to work with a professor, but I have a broad interest to work in AI programming. I really like doing mathematics. How do I narrow down apart from like, and I think like you touched the topic of like volunteering in different labs, but is there a way to find your interest? Like what kind of things you can look back saying, look for these kind of signals to make sure you really like this area?
I think it's a hard question, very frank, saying from beforehand. Volunteering is good way, but also like you can volunteer at few places and then it take time, right? And there's a pressure of, let's say you volunteered, like in my first semester or second semester, I believe in my PhD, I had gained so much knowledge. Like I know fairness things really well. I know traditional NLP well. I know word vectors and all those things well. Even I attended some of the seminars on systems and all. Like I don't know. Okay, so my knowledge was increasing and I was finding interesting areas. But at the same time, I have zero publications coming from my PhD. And at one point, I decided, okay, now I will work on this field and prioritize and get things done and started with this. It's a hard thing for people and all. But then I feel is more about like you have to be more curious and like s- do things, attend stuff, see what people are doing, see what their belief is. If that align with your aspects, I don't know this is a right or very, I think it's a very, I'm kind of skipping the answer in some way, but like my thought is like, if you do that, then it's fine. Also, I see, let's say a person like me, I'm a PhD, like say, and PhD in my area, like say structured representation, structured data, correct? But if he's the smart student and if he has some particular, let's say, RL interest, I think he can still come in my area and do something very great. So it's not like if you have a smart aspects and some directions, there's a good thing will apply to a lot of more places, not just single thing.
Right.
And then you get opportunities there. So the thing is like even if you doing some particular thing, if you have ideas, if you're smart, if you can do things, then you can apply there also. So the interest is not like fixed, I think. There's also like trying things will first answer is trying a lot of things and seeing which works, which is like same as food tasting. Like we if we have never eaten some kind of cuisine, we never know it's good or bad. Correct? Once we have eaten, we have preferences and all. And over those times, those preferences become more stronger and all. But at the same time, like if you can do something interesting and out in other things also, people do invent new dishes. Like it's a very bad example I'm quoting, but like that also
Yeah.
you can happen. So I feel like you need to also have patience, which I feel is a little bit missing now because of this publishing and perishing culture kind of thing. Which I feel bad also. Like people are so stressed out about jobs, stressed out about papers, stressed about interns and all those like first year itself they want to do extremely great works, which is not bad. You should obviously have results are important, but I think like the process kind of thing is somewhat on the down nowadays. So which is I feel something which is not good kind of thing. Both things should go in parallel kind of thing. So yeah, and if you don't do things, you never know if they are good or bad. So that's one thing I also feel. People should have you should have tasted all the cuisine. If you don't do, you are not living the right. Maybe the life is not full of tastes kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this is
And
should be there and attend seminars. I feel young people. I agree, like reading papers and it's hard and time consuming and all. But attending talks is the most easiest thing. And the other guy come very full prepared and all. And he, so I used to attend a lot of talks in my 2018, 19 when I joined PhD and all. Like, and he's obviously like totally out, uninteresting to me. I don't attend. But like, if there's even something of AI data science, I just go. because that's something you get some new insight, something, and then many of the things I thought was connected with the talks which I have attended and all, and also that bring you closer to what people are doing, what they are doing, and being in the department and all. So this seminar thing is one of the easiest way if you can start exploring research kind of thing. And other thing is also, it's also about maybe you have something very nice in idea, but you don't have the facilities to do those things. So you may not have a professor who work in that area, or me, you know, not have something around. Then you find the way how you do it with another professor. He may collaborate and all. So those things can also happen with time, you know. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it's also about the resources you have. So see the resources, attend seminars, get to know things. And for example, in ASU, there's this Fulton Fellow lectures going on, and I also attended some of them, but then I couldn't because of other commitments. But I think it's very good thing for PhDs to go and know what other faculties are doing and like what they are working. And so well done, like because they present all their research group research kind of thing. So there are always venues of seminars and all, and it's true in every university which you can attend and get knowledge. And sometimes external speakers are there, you can connect to them. When I was in Penn, like there was Glunch in very good speaker come, and like we have good knowledge. So despite like some of these areas were not even closely related to me, but I get some good ideas, and I always said, oh, this can be used in my area in some way. Maybe I not follow all of them, but like it still give good ideas, and it's good for new PhD who has time and bandwidth to chase that area. Maybe your advisor don't have that thing, but you, if you can do, and it's may get some new direction, it's nice.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add to that is even looking back, like I think if I heard this advice in my first year, I wouldn't have taken it. But one thing I recommend also to newbies who are coming to ASU or any university is getting started is most important rather than picky about like being picky about like which research, because at the end most of these skills are very transferable. Just me being in computer vision does not mean in tomorrow like I won't be able to work on LLM research. Broadly, there are some commonalities in AI research problems. There are still like you have to be very careful about understanding your data pre-processing, training strategies, choosing an architecture, making sure how you track these metrics, making sure like how you understand and like how you improve these metrics, and understanding the business goal, or maybe in this case a research goal. So I think these skills are very transferable. When I joined my lab, I think there was a student that I typically replaced who graduated, and he was working on medical disorders using medical imaging data. And then he started to work at LinkedIn, which has nothing to do with imaging data, nothing to do with disease. It was just like structured machine learning research. And then he went to Cruise, which like is like a self-driving company. So it has nothing to do with that, but the concepts are really transferable. So this is one thing I recommend people. But I think again, like I said, if I had to take a dose of my own medicine, I wouldn't taste it. Like I think if I want someone to tell me which field is gonna be dominating in the next 10 years, and then I'll choose my field accordingly. But yeah.
Yeah, and also like sometimes you should have a conviction that it work, and it might not work also. I'm not saying.
Yeah.
So when I started on table, it was not very famous and all. But neither my advisor ever worked on table. Like he wrote my first paper on tabular reasoning in the structured data with me. But this we have a conviction. This is a very nice idea and all. And sometimes I think it's okay to not see long vision. Like for advisors and all become important. But for you, it's okay if you just look at the next paper. But in the next paper, which is something also I recently read on LinkedIn, I forgot who shared, doing that really, really good. Like not just having the main table of we are beating state of art, but really telling where the system failed, what are the things, where the
Right.
on my first paper I realized, oh, this is the hard problem and these are the challenges, and I haven't solved them. So next paper was all about like, oh, these are the challenges in this area. This is thing. Like now people work on it and I will also work on it. So sometimes area develop as you do things also. It's
Yeah.
not just if you don't do it, it's not there. And you don't need to okay have the 5 year vision. 5 year things changes. Like who knows pandemic came and like there will be work from home culture and like everything, and then we will have so much technology, Zoom and all those. There was like, so many things, so much, correct? Like so you could
Right.
pick that thing, but you can at least work on the next 6 months or next paper really, really well. And make sure in that area, that thing I do the best job. Can I get not just numbers, but also analysis, where breaks, what happens, everything in detail. So think about that's your best paper you are writing and do that thing really well. And I'm sure if you do this thing well, your next 3 4 good ideas which you interested in which you connect will automatically happen. So you don't need to worry about, oh, next idea kya hoga, and which is trending, what is trending. So the trend will not affect you, and then obviously you will make strike. This I strongly feel like you should. Yeah, I've seen like people before even joining, they care about like, will this be useful when I go for job and all those. Uh, you should, like, research is the end thing, process and all is. And also, I feel like PhD is not about 5 papers. This I say every time, everywhere. It's the training process. It make you independent thinker. It make you independent writer. It make you how to collaborate with things. It make you how to handle stress. It make you handle how to deadlines. It
Right.
make you handle how to communicate your ideas well to the audience. It make you l- better at other making other people interested in your ideas. Make you how you connect things across ideas and all, and then pushing the edge. So
Right.
it's not just about the, oh, 5 papers I get and they should be famous and I get big. I don't think that's the right. It's a training which is there, which make you an independent thinker, independent researcher, and it's a doctor of philosophy again. Like we still I this is not a cliche, but I feel like this thing should be there. Like it's beyond 5 papers, things which is there. And don't worry about the 5 year down the lane. Just work on the next thing really well. And 5 year automatically gets sorted.
And I wanted to probe you further on this particular point, because I remember, and I think for listeners, like maybe I'll put a link to that particular blog that you posted some time back, right? I think your struggles with your graduate life, which I think like wasn't pleasant in its very nice way, which for most people could be pleasant. And I wanted you to maybe talk a little bit more on that, because I think not a lot of people really talk about these things, especially in AI research. I'm sure it's not specific to just AI, but at least for listeners to this particular podcast are AI. And nowadays we see a surge of people getting interested in AI. So I wanted to learn more about, like, I think that particular blog post talked about what kind of other struggles you had on top of doing research as a student, as a graduate student, and coming to US and like leaving your comfort zone. So I wanted you to maybe talk a little bit more about, like, how do you think the role of mental health looks like in graduate life? How, what are the some of the pitfalls? Like you said, for example, like having 5 papers, which is a pitfall, I personally think. Even though I think most companies nowadays require, like in their eligibility criteria, they do mention you need to have a triple AI, CVP, or NeurIPS papers. But how do us as students who have little to no knowledge about the real world, how do we avoid these pitfalls? Because yes, it's very easy to get into the metric game, right? Like numbers game, how many number of papers, citations. How do you make a valid justification or like a consolation to person not to fall for these pitfalls in his or her graduate life?
That's a very, very nice topic. And I think I can talk on this for long, but I'll keep it short. So yeah, this is something I feel first of all, this is all based on my experience and what I feel. So may not generalize. So there are people who have very good experiences on the PhD, and there are also people who have very bad experiences. And there are also, I think PhD is very personalized thing. So I won't say like I have very bad experience kind of thing, but have their own hardship and struggles around it. And some of these are also personalized, connected to other people and all. So one thing I feel everybody who wants to do PhD should feel like PhD is hard. First, it's a 5 year commitment. You are doing research, which itself means you are trying to do things which are not done before. That is challenging. That's why it's not done before. And that will bring stress and can affect you. Okay. Now, stress is not bad if it's in limited term and if things are surrounding in back, but it can become in a very weird way, as you say. And one big factor around this is peer pressure, as you said, like 5 papers, publication going in, they are doing this, they got this award, that comparisons, this will happen. And I'm saying this now, but as when I was a PhD, I also used to do and everything around that, and I got stressed about these things also. Apart from this, also I feel we right now, and this is true for advisors and everybody, like we forgot that like it's PhD is not your life, and there's a human there and he's doing things, and you should be very. It's hard kind of thing enforcing, but like there should be supporting structures around this. Correct. And
Yeah.
I was lucky, like my advisor was good and he understand things and all. and I got support when needed, and it works eventually work out for me everything. But this is not true with everybody and all. Like, so the supporting structure and all is nice needed. So it doesn't mean like, let's say I'm right now here and all. I also know people who are like billionaire and all. So that mean should I die? Like, no, no. There are people at every level. There's capacity. There's doing things. Make the best of what you have in the best thing. And this thing you should. The advisor also should encourage their student out. Like it should not just come from the student itself, but from the advisor also. You did good. This is what is it. And then support in the way they can. They have more power. They have more stuff. Okay. Not just ki, okay, get me this paper. It's also pressure on their side also, correct? They also want the good.
Right.
But that's something which definitely is needed. And second, like if you're committing this 5 year, I have definitely feel like there's a lot of costs associated. In my blog, I talked about like my family struggles, coming to a new culture, correct? In India, it's like this. India is like kind of more socially connected and close knitted thing. You have your families and everything, where things are a little bit more isolated out there and all. Secondly, there is also this aspects of now kind of little bit competitiveness across students, and also like you tend to not, because you're not doing well, maybe you don't talk to others about it, and like be stay in isolation. That aggregated the things out also. So
Right.
so this one thing I do, and it's also depend on people nature. I am like more introvert kind of thing, like I keep my things inside rather than splitting it out much. Nowadays I do, because I it's okay. That's why I write the blog. I never say all this thing to anybody. So some people
Right.
have different way of scoping out and things. But the first is PhD is not your life. Secondly, advisor should have much more supportive structures. My advisor do supported me at a lot of places and all, and that's why I'm here. So those things are all needed, and even at the community level, we need it. Correct. I always believe everybody is good at something, and if you can furnish that, polish that thing really, really well, that guy will be great at that. You have to find it, and it's role of the advisor, mentor, community to find that and put around this thing. And then
Mhm.
PhD is not your life; it's much more beyond that. So have a life around that thing, and family and all are important. So I have made these bad decisions of not, okay, this deadline is coming, I will not visit home, I will not do this thing, or I will just focus on this part of this thing, or chasing the next deadline kind of thing, which also I do now. But now it's more about like for my students, I have to chase things because I don't want him to delay and then he don't go home. Okay. So
Yeah.
this is my thought about, okay, they should have less pressure in the next deadline, because if they miss this, they will have pressure in the next one, or they will feel okay, they are lagging behind. Oh, but as a student, I used to have this pressure. Oh, I missed this. Okay, I should not go home and not. But I think you should have life in parallel with that, and take help from people. And if you have a group where everybody is doing great and all, like you should have always have friends from other PhDs and other thing. And even I'm saying at the professor level, like if I live in silos, I always feel, oh, I'm doing bad and this is this. But once I go and talk with other people who are doing, oh, they have the same problem, they have the same issue, they are struggling with same. So talking helps, correct? So talk to people, tell your struggle, and be free about it. Okay, nobody is going to judge you, and even if they judge you, don't care. Just do it. So this is one thing I feel, and obviously I understand PhD has a cost. And like I had lost a lot of personal, like my father was not there, passed away, and my family couldn't visit, and a lot of stress around things, and the competitiveness suddenly increases. COVID came, correct, and then suddenly LLM came and I couldn't apply academia, and then everything is LLM now. They say if you do LLM you can apply, otherwise there's no point kind of thing. The field changes,
Right.
pivot. All these challenges will come in life, and this is PhD. I think I feel this is the challenges of life which will come in different form, other and all. But what you have to be strong and have supporting structures, and but like talk to people and blabber out things. This will ease your mind and make it after I feel happy about, despite what it's good, bad, I don't care. So these things you
Right.
should do, and have supporting structure, and don't take too much stress, not think. So few advice like for students, I think that blog and all this thing, but I think is keep your mental health on sane, do visit your family and give time in the whole 12 months, whatever I say, it's fine. But like still like have some time of your personal space, have distraction beyond your PhD. So I later on started playing badminton, and I said like, okay, my goal is also to beat people in badminton, not just beating them in research or beating or maybe publishing more papers and all those. No, that's not. So badminton was also another factor around this. Some people recently I adopted a pet, and that being another joy in life. You have things to care of, taken care of, correct? Like you go home on time and all those things. So
Yeah.
having distraction is not bad. And to be very frank, sometimes if you are doing good in that aspects, you will never know. You get new ideas, you get stress relief. What you do in like 5 hours, you may do in 1 hours. You will be more efficient, you will be more relaxed. It will recycle back. So it's not like the time wasted there, it's like the time, the energy and time gain there, which you will help here. So this thing you have to keep in mind, and I think advisors should be also a little bit supportive on that. Also listen, there is also a time of doing things. So at some point, I feel like every PhD should learn time management. And some where I feel the frustration between advisor and PhD came is like they said, okay, this time is the perfect time to do things, and you should listen then and get this thing done, and then you get free kind of thing. But we as a student and like we are a little bit humans in overall is very inefficient way of doing things. Like we delay things, we sometimes don't push, you understand? So
Yeah.
it's time for doing everything, but what we end up is doing everything in the end, or we messed up the timing kind of thing. So if you can do a better time management, which I feel in my PhD, if I have done, I could have done even better, but still it's fine. But I still feel I have no regret, like still I did my best whatever possible. But PhD do have a cost. Keep your mental health sane. Have distractions. Have competition in other sports. Do some physical activity. I'm saying this, but I'm myself very lazy around that. But do definitely do, because it's physical health also affect your mental health and everything. That's very, 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 very important. And talk to good people. There's you will find. So I have mentors and all, like maybe they don't even work in the NLP and all, but it's good to talk to them about and like revealing stress. They tell their own experiences and all. So have people beyond this NLP and your area. For definitely have people beyond those areas. Nowadays in conference, I'm more excited to people not because of the research, but because oh, this guy has this interesting thing. Like it's good to know his update on this thing and all. Like so
Yeah.
have friends beyond your kind of like your academic area and all those, and have things that will also really really help. And actually also one good part is when you tell them about your research, they will think of little bit highly of you versus people
Mhm.
in your field. They say, ah, this is another paper of you. Okay, so I also have it.
Yeah.
That's bring you need motivation. Without motivation there's nothing. So I feel like that thing, motivating people and doing better, that's I think is good. And I also believe like you don't need to be extraordinary to do extraordinary things. Ordinary people, if given good support, good chance, good motivation, they can do extraordinary thing. And maybe they do really extraordinary thing coming. So if anybody say like from this university I can't publish this level of work, I give them all the example, all the great research, Nobel Prize and all. They came from very people who don't know. They now become famous. Now people are gaining on their name and all, but they actually were somewhere and don't have those fully support and all, and they did it. So you can do it. It's not like that. So have faith in yourself, have family, friends, support, and also like even like say you can't do physical activity or you're not much more in the extracurricular and all. Like, do organize seminars, do something external, even academic, correct? Like if you like teaching, just do teaching more. Like I did course, took a course in my last second last semester and last third semester, something like last third semester kind of thing on teaching and all. And I think that was very good experience for me. I really love it. Like so that also motivated me. I should go in academy and all. So I have the same of okay, I will apply in academy and do it. But actually, when I went there, I really like the learning associated with it and all those. And they that didn't help me getting like I could have got 2 more papers if I am not done that. But it's I think
Right.
every word time spent on like that thing. So I
Yeah.
don't think so. There's any time wasted. Like people, you have to live life, correct? And the main goal is to be happy. Obviously, you need money and you need fame and you need things. So you work on that. But that doesn't mean you can't do other things. You should always do the same thing. Like, you should do other things also. So have those distractions, do things. If you and physical activity is important, but also that if you can organize things, if you can do something extra different and all, we do it. And don't listen to people much. Like people can say a lot of things like, and I don't think so. We should bother about much. You should not
Yeah.
even reply, but you should not even bother much. So these things I feel can help you in getting more sanity and all this. So talk to your parents about this. You may not understand it, but they will appreciate what for you. And it helps. You need motivation in life to do well. It's just
Yeah, I mean,
very, and it's this problem is going to be grave in the coming years. Like people are going to be, I already see people getting depressed in AI, so AI community and all. Like, it's not healthy.
yeah. I, I I think that's a very powerful message. I think the message is like being focusing more on being a well-rounded person rather than just being a researcher is much more important. I think the way I look back is like 5 years is a long time, right? So it can also help you build good habits, but it can also help you build bad habits. So and in the race, I think for like getting the next publication or running the next experiment, I think it's very easy to get lost and build up those habits that are not really helpful. So I think, yeah, I think I was at a seminar at ASU itself. Like I think the advising team um, organized a seminar for the new incoming PhD students, and they asked us like, what are the things you would recommend? And I think one thing I recommended is like making sure you have like a schedule. I think in the initial few years when I came from masters, I didn't have a schedule because we had semester courses that were like throughout the different parts of the days, right? So like we didn't have a sleep schedule. On some days I was sleeping early, some days I was sleeping late, and that also translated into my PhD research. If I just want to run some new experiment, I'll just wake up few hours late. But at least after failures of like maybe 1 or 2 years, I realized, okay, it's not gonna help if I just stayed up to 2 hours more, but it's definitely gonna hurt my sleep, or at least my sleep cycle for the next day. And yeah, I think having hobbies like I mean I'll be happy to play badminton once with you, because since we are here, but those kind of things I think helped. It could be anything. I go to gym. For me, like that's like something away from my computer that really helps. Cooking and those kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean I love your message itself. I'm just adding on top of it. And thanks for sharing.
Always staying in lab is not right, because it's very likely in the lab you will have a conversation only about research.
Yeah.
Luckily, my lab used to talk about other things also and all. We are good friends and all. Later, in fact, in later stage, we only talk about those things apart from. Actually, this helps, and it will. If you feel like, I also feel many people. Used to feel like this is time wasted. It's not. It will recycle in the form of energy and get you better things done in quicker way and doing things. And if you do something, I always believe if you do something happily, even if like grading things, correct, you will do much faster, much better, and much cleaner job. Versus you are forced to do something and then you have a deadline you are chasing and you don't want to do it. And it's okay to delay few things. Also, I feel if you feel that the paper is not ready, if you feel you are not ready, if you're not things. Sometimes pushing is important because it let you work, like whether you procrastinate and all. But if you think this is too much and all, it's okay to delay. Like there's no world is not like. I also feel like this is my feeling, like my presence here and my absence here will not affect the world. It's a good thing in some way. It's also a bad thing in some way, because that
Yeah.
means like okay, am I contributing anything? But at the same time, I'm not in the pressure. Okay, if I don't do this thing, things will break down.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah.
And, and I think to wrap up, I think one last question that I have, and I think this has been like, even though it's a very simple question, I really like asking this question to almost all researchers. I have had asked this question to professors, to scientists, to engineers, to product managers, to CEOs, or even like other disciplines I don't even recall now. And one thing, and I've changed this question over the years also. Like when I started, I used to ask them, what kind of tips that you have for getting into AI to any newbies. But I think I would like to rephrase it nowadays. Like I think in the last few years, I've changed it to saying, if like what kind of advice, looking back, you will give to person who is interested in AI. How do you choose? Should that person be doing PhD in order to get into the field of AI, or that person should be focusing more on getting jobs that are specific to AI? Because nowadays I think there's a balanced contribution from industry and also some balanced perspective from academia. If you are much more into building stuff or engineering stuff, you might be well in the industry. And a much more specific question built on that is like, who would you say, what kind of disclaimer you would give to students when they are considering PhD? Because like you said, PhD is hard, so definitely if you are not built out for that, it's better if you don't choose for it and choose careers otherwise, because PhD is not the only way to get into AI. So what kind of advice you would give, having this in mind, to a newbie at your doorstep asking questions?
Okay. So my one thing is like you do PhD or not, doing research or working in AI is nice thing. It's hard. Yeah, I already said like products will be coming, things will be there in AI, and you see it's nice, it's automation and all. If all that get excited about you, I'm not saying the other fields are bad, but if all that get excited you should be there. Now coming this topic of should I do a PhD or should I not do a PhD? Or I feel like so first thing I believe everybody you should go with this first setting. PhD will be hard. Secondly, also I want to tell them PhD is not just about that 5 publications or 3 publications you have. It's about going deep down in one area or few areas and building something on that. So if you are not excited about that work, that thing, kind of thing, then it's harder. Third is it's your PhD. However supportive, however helpful, however great your advisor is, it's your PhD. So you will have time where you have to make independent choice, independent decision, independent stress, independent stuff. And if you can handle those things really well, then it's okay, PhD. But also at the same times, you will have good moments. Will you have when you have publications, you attend conferences, you will see, you will develop yourself as an independent thinker, researcher. You think on the ideas of things connect well, that things well. Now, if you just like, okay, somebody give you a set of instructions, somebody give you a task, there's already existing work around it, and you can grasp like things well and implement things really well, then I think it's good to just go in an industry job and do these things and really well. And then with time also, like if you don't even do a PhD, but within time, like 3, 4 years, you can do those things really well and become expert. And maybe sometimes even better than a PhD in doing those things well, which is true in many ways. So I feel like in those cases, you already have somewhat answer your question. Like if you have those mindset, okay, I don't want to take the headache of getting this thing done from scratch, like a white paper, what like making this fixed decisions to getting the things. But I have like, okay, if you give me a task and if you tell me what exactly is there and all this thing. So I always believe in the PhD, the phase is like first year, you are given the task, you are giving step by step, you are given a assistant writer who will help you out and do things. Last year is like you should say, oh, this is good area, this is not done, this is a research, let me do everything end to end, and you enjoy it. Then I think
Right.
you are ready to graduate. So getting from those things where everything is supported and given and help every step versus, oh, you pick things, you do it, you stuff out, and you enjoy it also at the same time. You feel proud about it. If you can do that thing, then it's kind of like PhD is good for you. So this is what I feel. And good part is now we have options for both. Academia is also good, and then industry also you have applications. There's a lot of things where you need and all things where you don't need so much depth knowledge and so much expertise, and but you need good grasp of how things are working, how it's transformer, what is prompt, how it's done, how can I make. You can read new ideas and still put them out and all. But if you want to have like an end solution of some complex problem which not has been studied before, I think PhD is the way you should think of it. So what I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I love that. Like, maybe just adding to that is, I think, when I talk to people where they ask you where exactly PhD helps in AI research, I think one thing it helps is, like you said, being an independent researcher. So most of the, like, if you are in industry, you have been working in AI, definitely it's a different skill set. I'm not gonna say it's lesser, but I think one other thing that being in academia or doing a PhD helps is building that intuition. So if I give you a particular problem in let's say next 15 minutes, how you approach that problem is much more different versus how a person being in the industry and working in AI will approach that problem. And building in that intuition and understanding what are the things that I think from a fundamental level rather than engineering level is very important at the initial stage of a particular um, task, I would say. And I think that really helps, and you can only do that. There's no way, like, at least in my current understanding, there's no way you can do that in industry. Maybe in the next 10 years there are some, because I have seen some professors leading research labs in industry who might be doing some way or the other, but on an average I have a better shot being in the university or being in the academia to learn those skills and then learn the engineering skills or building skills from the industry.
Correct. And also, like at the same time, also feel like this, or like I wanted to do PhD because I want to be a professor. Okay.
Yeah.
Things like you can only train thing if you have done the training yourself. Correct. I can't be a swimming instruction if I don't know this. Correct.
True.
Okay, or I can't be a scuba diver instruction if I don't have no scuba diver. The same thing is also in some way. If you like teaching, if you like mentoring, if you think, then you have to do PhD. That's part of the thing. You have to go through that training. You have to go through those things and get things done. Even at some point of time, postdoc was so mandatory because okay, you know how to do research by within a guidance, but can you now guide student? And then you can
Right.
now I can tell you build your own lab. Correct. So
Yeah.
now a little bit relaxed on the postdocs and all, but like still, this was a thing of even professors was recruited and all. So postdoc was so important at that time. So this is another thing. At the same time, I also feel like with industry also, if you spend enough time and as you rise in the career ladder, you do come at a position where you are smart enough to make decision. But I still feel you're good enough for that company or that problem statement or that niche area, but still fun.
Right.
But as a PhD, I think if you put me in some other tomorrow, if I think I feel like I can work in 10 industry and solve that 10 new problems. This is what I believe in.
Right.
Where I feel like if somebody who is also spent like 6 years in industry in particular area or some particular company, he might not able to generalize many of those things. He might do it on similar companies, very similar and all, but not on this. But I can take scratch 10 problems and do something more interesting on this. This is my belief. Maybe I'm don't
Mm.
hit me on that, but like this is what I think PhD give you confidence on.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that answer. And this gives me more motivation to at least finish my last year of my PhD. So yeah, thanks for that. But yeah, I think that was a fantastic podcast. I think I got to cover most of the questions that I had. I think um, we talked about your background, and I think understanding how you got into working with semi-structured data and algorithms around that. We got to the most hot questions nowadays, which is LLM and reasoning stuff. So I think listeners might be interested into this because it gets discussed a lot, but it's mostly discussed on one end versus the other ones, and you are trying to follow both of these personalities. Like most of the times, I'm following academic researchers, and I follow both of them. I respect their opinions, and when they start fighting between them, with it's a intellectual fight, so it's not like a direct fight. And we as researchers who have little to no background, we really don't have any reasons to pick one side versus the other to understand where the field is going. So I think yeah, it's always nice to have someone like you share honest opinions. And yeah, again, I think you are the first person who I was able to talk about mental health, because I do think it's very important. I have been in the fraternity of PhD students since last 4 years at ASU, and I think it's one or the other. Like somebody has some way or the other to deal with it, so it's definitely nice. And at least for people who are from ASU, they know someone who openly talks about it and being vocal, so they'll feel free to reach out. So again, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I think it should be useful for people who are listening. So thanks for sharing your opinions.
Last comment I have is so on that thing. I have friends both in academia. I have friends both in industry and very good friends. So I'm at both places. Second thing I want to say is this: mental health is very very interesting. And one of the series I like is Humans of AI, which was started by Dhruv and Devi.
Devi, yeah.
I love that things. In fact, like I got to know, I think some people are really, really smart and everything good going in their life. I went to go on that series and I like what kind of problems they have, what kind of struggles they have. And that also give me some motivations around how I deal with things and all. So, like, I think these aspects of mental health is also interesting. And thanks for asking that question. And thanks we can delve in that and do something, talk about that thing and encouraging others also to do that. Nice. And I really enjoyed my time here. And it was always nice talking to you and discussing ideas. And
Yeah, no, it was lovely to have you here. And yeah, once again, thanks for being on the show and
we should
sharing
play
this.
badminton together for sure.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, definitely, let's do that. But yeah, thanks. And I'll leave links to people, like links to your profile and things we discussed in the show notes, so people can refer to those things if they need. So yeah, thanks
Thank
once
you.
again.
Thanks for